Alright, so let's go ahead and create the final piece, which is the actual grenade pin itself. And we're gonna put the hole on this side because that's really the main side we're working with. You can do it on the other side, it really doesn't matter. Just do the same thing that I'm doing to this side and you can do it to the other side very, very easily. So let me downres this to the lowest subdivision level here. What I'm going to do is pretty simple. I'm going to select both of these edges right here. And I'm going to right click, and actually I'm not going to right click. Instead, what I'm going to do is, well, let me first of all isolate the selection. So I'm going to go to my camera options here, isolate the selection so the other stuff isn't in my way. I'm going to select this polygon in here, shift select this polygon out here, and those two are going to punch through each other. So I'm going to show you how that works. Let's right click and we're going to inset these polygons. So let's adjust the inset amount like so, and actually that's pretty good. But I want it to be more of a round hole. So right now it's kind of like a slanted polygon. I need it to be a lot straighter than that. So that's actually going to be pretty easy to do. Let me close that PPG. I'm going to go into a side view here. And you can see both polygons are not aligned properly. So what I need to do is kind of just align them in position together. So very easy way of doing that is just taking the points and just pretty much matching them up visually. Just coming in here and matching them up to the point to where it looks like there's only one polygon and not two. Okay, so that's good enough right there. Now I'm going to select this point here and I'm going to try to make a square. That's what I want to do. I want to keep this as square as possible because a sub D square is going to give me a round hole. Okay, so now I have a square, or somewhat a square. I'm going to select those two polygons and I'm going to move them down. Make sure both of them are selected. Move them down like this. So I don't want this one moving down like that past this edge down here because it's going to ruin my topology. Same thing with the other side. So right now if I go my side view, they're aligned pretty well, and that's actually good enough. All we have to do with those two polygons selected is simply right click, go to bridge polygons, and we'll pop a hole right in there. Now to straighten the hole out, which is what we want to do, let's select that edge, Alt middle mouse button click that edge. You should have the entire ring of edges on the inside selected. But you can see that the hole looks kind of weird. What I'm going to do is straighten it out a little bit. I'm going to select this edge here because you can see that the width of this polygon here is much wider than this one. So I'm going to fix that. I'm going to take this edge and move it back like this so it's a little bit straighter. And if we go to a let's go to the top view, drag this out like this. Here's our top view. It's actually a little bit hard to see right there, but let me select that edge again. Actually, it's very difficult to see in the top view, but if we move that back, you can see now that this line is somewhat straight, and you want it to be as straight, as close to being as straight as possible. It's going to give you probably much better results than if you didn't keep that straight. So let me go ahead and resize these windows again like we had before. Alright, excellent. So now all I have to do is grab this edge, Alt middle mouse button click that edge. Just make sure you hold down Alt after you middle mouse button click. I'm going to subdivide these evenly. Then I'm going to select that edge, Alt middle mouse button click that edge to select the entire loop of edges right in there. As you can see, there's my loop of edges. And you probably guessed it, I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to bevel. I'm going to bevel these out so they reach right at the edges of that hole. Now I'm going to subdivide this a few times, and there we go. you can see that we have a nice hole set up where we can put the pin through the little handle piece right there. Excellent. Okay, so now I'm going to go to my camera options and hit isolate selection, and if you want to create another hole for the other side, just do the same procedure we just did, only do it to the other side, and bingo, there you go. Okay, so let's look at our reference image here, and we can see how the pin is. It's a ring right here, and then we have this little pin piece right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and create those last two items and we'll be done with this grenade. Alright, to create that little pin piece, this piece right here, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but it's doable. So let's go ahead and do it. I'm going to go ahead and go to primitive polygon mesh and create a brand new cube. And I obviously have to rescale this cube. I'm going to make it pretty small. Okay, so we want to make this cube pretty small. We're going to have to go into our side view here to position this right on the hole. And if we go to shaded view, we can see, excuse me, edit that out of the video. Come back in 3, 2, 1. We can see where the hole is, and that's where we want the cube to be. Okay, so there's the cube. Let's go ahead and scale the cube down so it fits in the hole, obviously. Let's go back to our camera viewport, and now the cube is inside the actual assembly for the grenade. So let's pull it out like this, and then we're going to scale it and use the red manipulator here to scale it and make it long. And we don't want to make it too long, make it stick out about that much is pretty good. I guess right there is pretty good. Let me see how much that sticks out. Let me see the image. That's about the same distance. No big deal. I'm going to select the polygon on the end. I'm going to hit Control D to extrude that polygon and pull it out like this. And now I'm going to select this polygon. And I'm going to select this polygon. I'm going to hit Control D and I'm going to activate the scale tool and scale them out away from each other. Something like this. Then I'm going to select this edge here, shift select that edge. I'm going to move them this way, like that. Okay, not bad. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this polygon here, this polygon here. I'm going to right click, I'm going to go to Inset Polygons. I'm going to inset them something like this. And let me see my image here real quick. I think I insetted them a bit too much. I'm going to inset them more like this. Okay, close that PPG. And now with that done, and let me see something here. Well, I guess it's okay. I'm going to hit the plus key to subdivide this a little bit, see how it's coming out. You can see I need to do some more work on it. Hit Control and plus to activate the wireframe. With those two polygons selected, what I'm going to do is right click. I'm going to go to Bridge Polygons to punch a hole in between there. Now I want to fix this up, so to do that, what I'm going to do is select this back polygon. I'm going to pull it out this way like this to straighten that out and make it look better. And there we go. That automatically fixed it quite a bit. Okay, so that's what we got. Probably want that to be maybe a little bit wider. Actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to select this edge, Alt middle mouse button, click this edge here, and that should select the entire ring, and it did. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to Subdivide Edges Evenly. I'm going to select this edge, and this edge right here. And then I'm going to move them back in like this into the object like that. And then what I'm going to do is, it's getting very hard to see what's going on, so I'm going to hit the minus key all the way. And now what I want to do is select this edge here, shift select this edge, and use the scale tool. Make sure that COG and global are turned on, and scale these in on themselves so they get really close, almost to touching, and subdivide this and see how it looks. There we go. Now we got more of a shape like what we have in our reference image. This is what we have. Here's a reference image. It's pretty close. Let's move it back out this way, like so. Scale it in closer. Even if it overlaps a little bit, that's okay. So maybe something like that works out pretty good. Let me select this edge here, and Alt middle mouse button click that edge to select this ring. I'm going to right click and I'm going to subdivide that evenly. I'm going to select this edge here, Alt the middle mouse button click that edge. I'm going to right click and split edges with split control so it splits it right down the middle. Okay, not bad. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this edge back here, shift select that edge back there, use the scale tool and scale those away from each other. And now what we're going to do is select this edge in here, shift select that edge, and we're going to scale those away from each other a little bit like that. Now let's shift select this edge, this little edge there, and the ones on the bottom, so this little one, and then we're going to scale that out like this. Let's hit the plus key one more time to smooth that out more. Render that, and voila, there we go. That's where the ring for the pin, for the grenade pin is going to go. So there's the grenade pin, and here's the actual ring you used to pull it out. Excellent. Okay, awesome. Now let's get the actual ring. That's not going to be too hard to do. Let's create that using a simple cylinder. I'm going to show you how you can do that using a simple cylinder. Let's go over here to primitive, go to polygon mesh, cylinder. Let's go ahead and close the PPG. Move this out over here. Select these top polygons and then these bottom polygons. Right click and go to bridge. And there we go, we bridged those. Select this polygon on the inside. Alt middle mouse button click that polygon there. Use the scale tool and then scale, but only scale in the Z and the X axis, that's the blue and the red, outward like this so it gets nice and thin. Just like that is pretty good. Then hit the space bar to select the entire object and scale it down on itself so it's really thin, like so. And if we go ahead and subdivide that, you see the kind of shape that we end up with. So let's unsubdivide that, knock it back down. Go to edge mode with ray casting, select that edge there, Alt and middle mouse button click that edge. That way you got all the ones in the middle. Right click, go to subdivide edges evenly. And now select this edge, Alt middle mouse button click that new edge to select the entire loop all the way around. Right click and go to bevel components. Increase the size of that bevel a little bit. That's pretty good. Now let's go to polygon mode. Select this polygon, Alt and middle mouse button click that polygon, and you should have the entire loop of polygons on the inside. Hit Control D to extrude and activate the scale tool. Make sure you're using global and COG mode. Now let's go to a top view. So let's switch out over here and jump into our top view. And now let's make sure that you're scaling only in the X and the Z axis. So move your mouse cursor in between here. and scale out something like this. Hit Control D to extrude again, pull it out to about here. That's pretty good. Let's go back to our camera viewport here. Subdivide it a few times, see what we got. Okay, that looks pretty good. Check that out. Nice. Awesome. Now what we're going to do is knock it back down to level 0. Select this edge, Alt middle mouse button, click that edge right there. Right click and we're going to bevel this side too. Increase the size of that bevel a little bit like so. Select this polygon, Alt middle mouse button, click that polygon. You should have the entire loop around the entire ring selected. Hit Control D to extrude and use the scale tool again like we did before and scale it down just a little bit, not too much. Control D to extrude again, scale it down again. This time we're going to need to go into the top view. There's no way we're going to be able to see right there. And move it back like so. Okay. So let's subdivide that a few times. Hide the wireframe cage and do a render. Okay, so there's our ring. Perfect. Now we just have to get it into position to go into that pin. So obviously it's rotated the wrong way. So let's rotate about 90 degrees on its side this way. You could type in 90 or -90 here in the Z channel for the rotate area. Let's go into a side view here so we can see how we're going to place this. And just move it into position. We may also have to change the size of the ring. Let's look at it. Actually, it looks pretty much like that in the image. I'm going to leave it at that size. I think it looks good. Now, it's not in the correct position, so we're going to have to fix that. Let's go to our camera viewport here and move it to the side like this. You can see we're going to have to adjust the radius of this thing. So that's something that we're going to have to do right now. But first, let's position this correctly. So it's going to go position something like that. Okay. Just to give it some variation, we're going to twist it a bit just like the one in the picture. So actually, before we twist it, let's get it to fit first of all. That's probably the most important thing right now that we have to do, is get it to actually fit into that hole. So let's knock this down in subdivisions. Go to our camera options and isolate the selection. And we're going to do this by coming in here, selecting that polygon in there, Alt middle mouse button, clicking the next polygon above it, and that should select the entire, yes it did, the entire loop of polygons on the inside. Now if you remember, we can use the grow selection tool to go ahead and grow the selection and help us out here. So hold down shift and hit the equal sign next to the backspace key and hit it again until you basically select all these polygons that I have selected right here. Then we'll use the scale tool and we can scale these using the blue and the green manipulators. Scale them out like this. To make it nice and thin. Like so. Let's go to our camera options and turn isolate selection off. You can see that the ring now looks, yeah, it appears as though it fits. Let's go to object mode, kind of play around with it and move it into position. Maybe move it up a little bit. So just get it nice into position right there. So now that we know it fits, might want to give it a little bit of a twist. So to be able to do this a little bit easier, what I'm going to do is hold down Alt and I'm going to move my manipulator over here in this area. Right about there. If you hold down Alt, you can move the pivot point of this object anywhere you want in your scene, which will allow you to rotate from that pivot point. So instead of rotating from the middle, I can now rotate from this point here, which makes my life a lot easier. Okay, so I'm going to give it a little bit of rotation like that, just to give it some variation. Alright, let's render this out. There we go. That's what we've got. There's our grenade. Okay, so we got all the details of the grenade done. This grenade is finished. The last thing we have to do is prep it to export it and get it exported out of here. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to select this object here. And actually, let me do this from the Explorer view. If you hit 8 on the keyboard, you'll open up the Explorer view, which makes it easier to select objects because you can see here, I don't know which object is which, and there's a whole bunch of objects, so it's easier to select them from here. So if I select this object, I can see which one it is. I can see that's the little pin. That's the little pin that goes in the front. That's the ring, and that's the actual body of the grenade. So what I'm going to do is grab this object here, hold down shift and select the last one in the list to select all the ones in between. And now if all the grenade piece is selected, and you'll see here it says multi and then 5 in parentheses in the selection box, that's to tell you you have a multiple selection and you have 5 objects selected. So with those objects selected, alt and right click on top of the objects, you get this multiple selection window. Go down to merge, click on that, and XSI is going to create a brand new object comprised of all the objects that we had selected. We also get this PPG that gives us a few options as to how XSI attaches those objects together to create a new object. And we can see the new object here in the Explorer view is called Polymesh. So what we want to do is make sure that this tolerance is set to 0. We don't want any tolerance. What that does, it takes border vertices or border points and tries to merge them together or weld them together. We don't want to do that, so we'll turn that off. Blend is off by default. That's another one we want to keep turned off. And then the next thing we have over here is a hide and delete button. If you hit delete, XSI is going to delete all of the original objects and only keep the new object. Now, my advice is to keep the originals because you never know whenever you're going to need to go back and fall back to them for whatever reason. So my advice is to use the hide button to hide the originals so that you can only see the new main object, which is right here. Let's close the PPG, and we're going to rename this object. So hit F2 on the keyboard. We're going to rename it to Grenade. Close this Explorer window, and by default, when we created a new merged object, it creates it and leaves it at the lowest subdivision level, which is level 0. So if you hit the plus key on the number pad of your keyboard a few times, you'll subdivide this and get it back to the way it's supposed to look. So there we go, there's a grenade. Awesome. So let's select the grenade. Let's down-res it all the way down. And with the grenade selected, let's go up to File, Export, .xsi, and leave the default options, they're fine. Hit OK. And now XSI is going to dump this file into the .xsi folder of the project directory. Let's make sure it's called Grenade and hit OK. And now this object is exported out, and now it's an asset that can be used in any number of projects. So we're completely done with the grenade. I hope you enjoyed modeling this grenade. It was a really interesting project and a lot of fun to do. So that'll do it for this video. I'll see you next time.